world is now larger than it ever was, and that means we have to be more aware about keeping ourselves and our data and computer systems safe. Most of us know that content from the internet can be potentially harmful, so we've installed and kept updated virus and spam software. However, there are times when we access data that we're not familiar with. Maybe somebody sends us a link in an email and we click on it and it opens a document. Or maybe the document is an attachment from somebody we know, but still, it's come over the internet. In this lesson, we'll explore some of the new features that will keep us safe with Office. I'll start by opening a file. I go to the File tab, open up our Backstage, go to my Open option, and I'll look at a file called Potentially Dangerous Document. I get a hint right when I look at this because the normal Word icon has a little exclamation mark on it. This isn't anything bad. It just means that it's macro enabled or it has active content in it. But since that's exactly what we want, I'll double click and open this. What we get to see that's new in Microsoft Office is this warning bar at the top. Some of you might think you've seen this before, but it behaves a little differently. In the past few versions, we've seen warnings like this for macros and active content, but not necessarily for things from the internet. This is now called Protected View, and by default, the feature is activated whenever files from the internet or from an email attachment are opened. It will also display, like for this document, when a file contains active content. Active content would include anything like macros, ActiveX controls, or even data connections. For example, a mail merge document that's connected to an Access database. When this occurs, you can either click Enable Editing or go into your Backstage and look for more information. You'll notice that right now it says Enable Content. If I don't click this and I try to work in the document, I won't be able to do very much because it says I won't make this available to you until you tell me that you think it's safe. In this case, I do, so I'll click the button, the bar goes away, and the document is now unlocked, just as I would expect it. Now I can modify, so I'll say potentially, but not dangerous document. I know that some people find these security measures irritating, and at some point I agree with you, and that's why we have trusted sources, locations, and documents. But these are the defaults. If you want to change your defaults, you can always go in and change them in your Word options by going to the Trust Center, which is where the macros, the ActiveX controls, the trusted locations, etc. are set up. So it will work the way that you want, but by default, it's going to come on whenever you have an internet-accessed document, active content, or something came from an email attachment. Now we know why a document might open in protected mode, even if it's from your own desktop or a place you would assume that things would be safe. What I'll do now is close this document and then show you one more feature. Oops! I closed that document without saving it. And that's trouble, right? Let's see. I'll launch Word again and go back to my beautiful Backstage view and look at my info panel. Notice what I can see here. Even though I didn't save it, it says Potentially Dangerous Document, when it says one that I closed without saving. This is a wonderful new feature, a fallback to the fallback, if you will. It's always asked us, do you want to save this? And for the last 20 years or so, if we say no, it decides that if you said no, the document would not be saved. Now, even though we say no, we can still get it back. If you don't see this option, it could be because your document was closed before Auto Recover had a chance to make its auto-saved version. There could be other reasons, but one thing to look at is to see if you have another folder called Recover Unsaved Documents. You'll see this at the bottom of the menu. But remember that Auto Recover is an important feature when it comes to using this particular tool. I also want you to remember that you have to have that set. It has to be enabled, and you can adjust how frequently those mini versions are saved. All of that would be found in your Application Options menu from the File tab. However, this is not something you should rely on. Just as you shouldn't keep things that you know you want to recover in the recycle bin, you shouldn't count on this to get your stuff back. It's a second chance option, but it is not a save feature. I'll click this, and there we go. It comes up as an auto-saved version, and I can compare it, or I can restore it. Wow! So if they don't think that I can handle things, maybe sometimes they're right, because sometimes my finger starts to come off of that button and, oh no, what did I just do? A few small caveats here, though. You obviously have to have your auto-saved versions enabled. So go into your settings and set that up for however many minutes you want. Usually 5 or 10 is good, because it does revert back to the auto-saved version. Obviously, that means that you would have had to have the document open, or at least that amount of time, for there to be a version for it to open up to. If we don't want to compare, and we don't want to restore to the version, but we want to stay with this one, we close this. We see that we also have our security warning, so I'll enable the content there. And I wanted to show you that if you go into your Backstage view and enter your information, you also can get back to your versions by using the versions here. This will give you a lot more information. This file has been opened in read-only mode because this version is automatically saved, and it will save it for just a few days. They're not specific, but for just a few days, and then it will automatically go away. So this makes the auto-saved versions a little bit easier to work with. I know a lot of people knew that they had auto-saved versions, but couldn't figure out how to open them up. This is our solution. I don't recommend that you close things without saving them. However, if you do, you can breathe easier because you have a second option. I'll get out of the Backstage view and remind you that at first glance, it might seem that there aren't that many new features in Word for Office, but when we look a little bit closer, or maybe more importantly, because we don't always take a closer look, we find that there are several things working on our behalf. Using the navigation pane to find content and rearrange it is a huge time saver. Adding text features to make our documents pop off the page and more easily communicate our intended message is great. And then behind the scenes, we have protection recovery features of Word that will keep us happy too, even if we don't always appreciate that it's working on our behalf. So there you have it, some of the new obvious and not so obvious features in Word for Office